Hi, my name is Rachel and welcome back to my channel. As you can tell by the title, I'm going to be reading banned books in this vlog because it is Banned Books Week. Banned Books Week takes place September 22nd till September 28th this year, 2024. You'll be seeing this video after the week is over, so I hope that you picked up some banned books last week. Before we get into my TBR, I do want to go over just a couple of statistics about banned books. According to the ALA, there was a record-breaking number of unique titles targeted last year in 2023, which marked a 65% increase from the previous year, 2022. Prior to 2021, the average number of titles challenged or banned in a year was around 273 books a year. According to the ALA, 4,240 unique book titles were targeted for censorship, as well as 1,247 demands to censor library books, materials, and resources in 2023, which is a 92% increase from the previous year. Public libraries and school libraries accounted for 46% of all book challenges in 2023, which was an 11% increase for school libraries since 2022. Titles representing the voices and lived experiences of LGBTQIA+ and BIPOC individuals made up 47% of materials targeted. In 17 states, over 100 books each were targeted, and those states are Colorado, Connecticut, Florida, Idaho, Illinois, Iowa, Kentucky, Maryland, Missouri, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Virginia, and Wisconsin. So if you live in any of those 17 states in particular, I live in Virginia and I'm moving to Tennessee later this year at the end of the year. So I know personally I will make sure to keep up to date on book bans in my local areas and what I can do about that. According to Psychology Today, book banning is concluded to have negative consequences on people's mental health. It especially impacts marginalized individuals, children and teens, librarians and school staff, as well as authors. Marginalized individuals whose stories are contained in the majority of challenged books, research shows that people of color are at a higher risk of facing mental health issues and have increased barriers to accessing mental health treatment due to institutional and interpersonal discrimination, stigma, and socioeconomic barriers. LGBTQIA+ individuals are nearly 3 times as likely to develop mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and some studies indicate nearly 45% of LGBTQIA+ youth seriously considered attempting suicide in the last year. This article was written in 2023, so that 45% is from 2022. Banning books about the lived experiences and histories of marginalized groups of people only serve to increase feelings of exclusion, invisibility, and intensify their risk of mental health issues. So when book bans happen, it's targeting groups that are already marginalized. Children and teens suffer when books are banned in their schools and public libraries for a lot of reasons, as young people are in a developmental period of identity formation with a strong focus on peer relationships. Banning diverse books robs them of the opportunity to have an open dialogue and engage in critical thinking in a safe, supportive environment. Youth are likely to seek information elsewhere from unmonitored, unsafe sources without the support of trusted adults. I think that in particular is really important to note here, the fact that it says without the support of trusted adults. A lot of books are challenged because of their content supposedly being inappropriate. A lot of LGBTQ books are deemed inappropriate for sexual content, inappropriate talk about sexual identities, or whatever freaking asinine reason the book banners are coming up with. And a lot of books about rape and sexual assault are also being taken off of shelves. And those are things that kids need to know about and recognize, because if those things, God forbid, happen to them, they need to see the signs and they need to be able to know what to do and who to go to in those situations. And it is particularly concerning to me as a parent that if my son was witnessing something, or worse, was happening to him that he didn't know how to voice and that he didn't know how to talk about, he wouldn't have those safe outlets of research and experience in his school library, and he wouldn't have access to materials that give him new tools and new languages to ask questions and open discussions with his peers or with trusted adults like his teachers, his school librarian, or even me. I think children are inherently curious and open-minded, and I don't see why we should be stopping them from learning things. Oh, I nearly threw my iPad. And before we get into my TBR, I want to talk about the 10 most challenged books. I think this is from 2023. This is from the ALA. Number 10 is Sold by Patricia McCormick, and the reasons this was challenged was claimed to be sexually explicit and rape. Number 9, Let's Talk About It by Erica Moen and Matthew Nolan. Reasons claimed to be sexually explicit, sex education, LGBTQIA plus content. Sex education is apparently inappropriate now. Wild. Number 8 is, there's a tie for number 7. So at a tie for number 7 is Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl by Jesse Andrews. Claims to be sexually explicit and has profanity. And it's tied with Tricks by Ellen Hopkins. Claims to be sexually explicit, drugs, rape, LGBTQIA plus content. Number 6, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. Reasons, rape, incest. Claims to be sexually explicit, EDI content. Flamer by Mike Curato. Reasons, LGBTQIA plus content. Claims to be sexually explicit. Number 4, The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. Reasons, claim to be sexually explicit, LGBTQIA plus content, rape, drugs, profanity. Number 3, This Book is Gay by Juno Dawson. Reasons, LGBTQIA plus content, sex education, claims to be sexually explicit. Number 2, All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. Reasons, LGBTQIA plus content, claimed to be sexually explicit. And number 1 banned book in 2023 was Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe. Reasons, LGBTQIA plus content, shocker, claims to be sexually explicit. Another shocker. It is inherently important that children have access to queer materials because children are going to be figuring out their own identities and are smart enough to know when they feel different, and they are going to need representation to show them that how they feel is normal and explore their identity safely within the pages of a book. And studies have proven that reading lived experiences of people different than yourself also helps to increase empathy. So as you can see, banning books is freaking terrible for numerous reasons. So this week, I really hope that a lot of people are reaching towards banned books. I've been posting about it on Instagram, so I hope that some of my friends and followers have followed my lead and picked up a couple, at least one banned book, but hopefully more than that. So this week for Banned Books Weeks, I wanted to pick up 3 books in particular. The first one, I really wanted to find a banned children's book and read that with my son and just go over topics with him that he might be unfamiliar with, as well as explain to him what book banning is. Even though he's only 5, I think it's important to introduce concepts and ideas that maybe he won't grasp 100% at this age, but to just introduce them and open up that conversation so it's something that he is aware of, even if it's just a mild awareness, so he's better prepared for the future. And the book that we read together was When Aiden Became a Brother. And this is by Kyle Lukoff. The synopsis says, when Aiden was born, everyone thought he was a girl. His parents gave him a pretty name. His room looked like a girl's room. He wore clothes that other girls liked wearing. After he realized he was a trans boy, Aiden and his parents fixed the parts of his life that didn't fit anymore, and he settled happily into his new life. Then Mom and Dad announced that they're going to have another baby, and Aiden wants to do everything he can to make things right for his new sibling from the very beginning. Today is actually Monday the 23rd, and yesterday I read this book to my son, and it was so cute. It was very heartwarming. Aiden's parents are so accepting of him, and I think it's so beautiful to see on page a trans boy of color with 2 amazing, supportive, accepting parents who never questioned him and did everything in their power to make him happy and make things right with his identity and help him feel at home in his own skin. And it was a really nice conversation starter with my son because he had a lot of questions about why Aiden was a girl and then why Aiden wanted to be a boy. And I think he definitely learned something, and I just really hope that he continues to be inquisitive. I'm also currently about 70%, I think, into The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. Set in Lorain, Ohio, it tells the story of a black 11-year-old Piccola Breedlove. Piccola prays for her eyes to turn blue so that she will be as beautiful and beloved as all the blonde, blue-eyed children in America. In autumn of 1941, the year the marigolds in the Breedlove's garden do not bloom, Piccola's life does change in painful and devastating ways. This book has heavy themes of racism, rape, and incest, as well as alcoholism in a parent, I believe, and child abuse. Piccola's life is so harrowing to listen to. It's narrated by the author herself, so it is a nice layer to the story to get to hear the inflection and intonation that she intended for her words to have and the impact that that's giving while I'm reading it. It is, I can't really say I'm enjoying it because it's not a topic that is like, woo, I'm having so much fun. It's just a really harrowing reminder that young girls of color especially have just suffered immensely by the hands of many different kinds of people. And I see why this book is challenged. There are some scenes that are graphic and hard to listen to. So I get why people are concerned about it, but that doesn't make it bad. And that doesn't make it something that needs to be removed from schools or libraries, because it is something that happens to people. It happened all the time and it still happens today. And this is a really great book to, I think, open the eyes of a lot of white people especially. And I just know the people banning it are probably white people. And the last book that I plan on picking up this week is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. And this is about a man named Guy Montag who's a fireman. His job is to destroy the most illegal of commodities, the printed book, along with the houses in which they are hidden. Montag never questions the destruction and ruin his actions produce, returning each day to his bland life and wife Mildred, who spends all day with her television family. But when he meets an eccentric young neighbor, Clarice, who introduces him to a past where people didn't live in fear, and to a present where one sees the world through the ideas in books instead of the mindless chatter of the television, Montag begins to question everything he's ever known. So I think Montag is supposed to represent like book banners and government restrictions, I guess, because he kind of is the embodiment of that. He's literally burning these books, and not only that, but destroying the houses of the people who dared to keep this banned material. And I feel like based on the summary, it might have commentary about like media and television and how books are an infinitely better source of entertainment. At least I hope so. I hope that's where this book goes. I haven't started it yet, but I've heard nothing but great things about this one. It is a classic, I think, and I don't normally love classics, but for some reason, this one really just reaches out to me, probably because it's related to books and book banning and book burning. But I think that I will really enjoy this one, like entertainment wise. I think this one will be more entertaining. Again, it is Monday. I've already read When Aiden Became a Brother with my son. I'm 70% into The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, and I haven't started Fahrenheit 451. Fahrenheit 451 is really short. I think it's like 200 or less pages. So I'm really hoping if I can power through that to pick up one more banned book this week. I would love to be able to pick up Genderqueer. I did check out the audio from my library and it's only 2 hours long. I think I should be able to squeeze this one in as well, but my husband is coming back from deployment tomorrow and it's been like 7 months since I've seen him. So me and my husband and my kid are probably going to try to spend a lot of time together, but while Riley's at school, I should be able to read. And if by some miracle I get through all 4 of those books, then I would also like to get to All Boys Aren't Blue. Genderqueer and All Boys Aren't Blue are the top 2 banned books from 2023, and I think based on the top 10 list that I gave you, if I am wrong, I'll put it on the screen here, but they are the top 2 from either 2023 or 2022, and The Bluest Eye is the 6th most banned book from 2022 or 2023. Anyway, this intro has been way too long, but I did really want to go over those statistics with you about book banning and why it's happening. And I also really wanted to talk about the most banned books and then obviously my TBR. And I will update you most likely when I finish The Bluest Eye because I am 70% of the way through it. And then I'm going to start Fahrenheit 451 also. Bye! The most important part of any skincare. Drink your water. Okay, I'm reading Fahrenheit 451. The main character, whose name is Guy Montag, is describing this girl that he met, and it is the longest descriptive sentence I've ever read in my life, so I just need to read it to you. She had a very thin face, like the dial of a small clock seen faintly in a dark room in the middle of a night when you waken to see the time and see the clock telling you the hour and the minute and the second, with a white silence and a glowing all certainty and knowing what it has to tell of the night passing swiftly on towards further darkness, but moving also towards a new sun. I had to take like 4 breaths to read one sentence. Like, it's not bad, I guess. Like, I've read it 3 times now because I was just like, what the fuck? Like, I get it. I get the vision, you know? I get it. But also, like, maybe add a few periods here and there. Like, that could have easily been 2 or 3 sentences. Oh my God. I just kept reading and it said, "What?" asked Montag of that other self, the subconscious idiot that ran babbling at times, quite independent of will, habit, and conscience. So he just called himself a babbling idiot. At least he's self-aware. Okay. I'm not that far at all, but it's funny, but not in like a way where like I'm laughing at it. Like I'm laughing with it, and I kind of love that. Hi, it's Tuesday. I'm 7% into Fahrenheit 451, and I'm kind of loving it. I think I said that last night. I'm honestly not sure because I was really tired, but I marked a spot that I read right before I went to sleep last night that I honestly like kind of was taken aback by how poetic this description really is. It has a lot of layers to it. So this is gonna be spoilery, just so you know, so I'll put a spoiler up in the corner somewhere, and if you want to skip it, skip forward until this goes away. So Guy just gets home at night from talking to that girl Clarice, and he walks into his room and the room is super dark, and I think him and his wife have separate beds in the same room. So he's like about to go to his bed and get in bed, and he doesn't want to turn the big light on and disturb her because she's sleeping. Essentially, he turns on his lighter, sees his wife's like shining eyes in the darkness, realizes she's taking extremely shallow breaths, and then he finds an empty pill bottle on the floor, and he realizes that I'm pretty sure she tried to kill herself, and he realizes that, and he kind of has like a panic attack. And I just think the way that this scene is written is so interesting, and I'm just gonna read it. He pulled out his igniter, felt the salamander etched on its silver disc, gave it a flick. 2 moonstones looked up at him in the light of his small handheld fire. 2 pale moonstones buried in a creek of clear water, over which the life of the world ran, not touching them. I think what he's saying here is her eyes were open and watering, and you know, she's crying, and he yells, "Mildred!" Her face was like a snow-covered island upon which rain might fall, but it felt no rain, over which clouds might pass their moving shadows, but she felt no shadow. There was only the singing of the thimble wasps in her tamped shut ears, and her eyes all glass, and breath going in and out, softly, faintly, in and out of her nostrils, and her not caring whether it came or went or came. Again, that's implying that she doesn't care that she's dying right now because she's the one who took the pills. The object he had sent tumbling with his foot now glinted under the edge of his own bed. The small crystal bottle of sleeping tablets, which earlier today had been filled with 30 capsules and which now lay uncapped and empty in the light of the tiny flare. As he stood there, the sky over the house screamed. There was a tremendous ripping sound, as if 2 giant hands had torn 10,000 miles of black linen down the seam. Montag was cut in half. So he's saying that it feels like he's literally being ripped in half. He felt his chest chopped down and split apart. The jet bombs going over, going over, going over. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 6 of them, 9 of them, 12 of them, one and one and one and one and another and another and another, did all the screaming for him. So I think in this moment, it's like a panic reaction. He sees that his wife is literally dying, and he feels like he's being ripped apart. And then he says that there's jet bombs overhead. And then I think that is kind of like him not being able to think straight. And then the repetitiveness when he says going over, going over, going over, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 6 of them, 9 of them, 12 of them, one and one and one and another and another and another. That repetitive like thought cycle is very like on par with having a panic attack. And then it says, he opened his own mouth and let their shriek come down and out between his bared teeth. The house shook. The flare went out in his hand. The moonstones vanished. He felt his hand plunge toward the phone. So he drops his lighter. He can't see her anymore, and he reaches to his phone. The jets were gone. He felt his lips move, brushing the mouthpiece of the phone. Emergency hospital, a terrible whisper. He felt that the stars had been pulverized by the sound of the black jets, and that in the morning the earth would be thought as he stood shivering in the dark and let his lips go on moving and moving. So I feel like that's kind of saying like he felt like the stars had been pulverized by the sound of the black jets. So that panic attack kind of opened his eyes and crushed that moment he had when he was walking into his house, or before this scene, he's walking into his house after talking to Clarice, and he's basically saying like, how dare she imply that I'm not happy? I am happy. But then he admits to himself, I'm actually not really happy. I just pretend I'm happy because I want other people to think I'm happy. And then after he walks in and sees his wife in the throes of committing suicide, dying on her bed, he says he felt like the stars had been pulverized by the sound of the black jets, and the morning earth would be thought as he stood shivering in the dark and let his lips go on moving. So I think it was kind of like a reality check of him being like, okay, like that facade of happiness and like even any scrap of happiness that he had to hold on to in that moment was like crumbled and disintegrated. And I don't know, man, I just thought that was crazy. Like I read that scene like literally 4 times last night because I've just never read a scene like that where something that was so metaphorical and so nuanced also felt like extremely relatable. That panic moment and the way that panic manifested, where he felt like, you know, the repetition in his mind, he felt like he was screaming, like he was hearing jets, because like when your heart starts pounding, you can hear it in your ears. And so I feel like that dum dum dum, like the jet noise that he was hearing was like his own nervous system reacting. And I don't know. I wasn't expecting to like this as much as I did. I think I said this last night where I feel like some parts of it I'm laughing at, but I'm not like laughing at it because I think it's stupid. I'm laughing at it because like it's like self-aware and also like a little bit silly, but I don't know. It's like I'm enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. But anyways, it's Tuesday and it's like 2:05. My kid gets off the bus in about 20 minutes. It's pouring rain outside, so when I have to go out there to get him, I'm sure I'm gonna look like a wet dog, and which really sucks because my husband is coming home from deployment tonight. I've been cleaning on and off all morning and I had to battle some spiders. But other than that, it's been just like a chill, overcast, rainy day, and I'm definitely excited to hang out with my husband tonight. Like I don't know what he wants to do. I know he's gonna be jet lagged, so I think we're just gonna have dinner and then probably relax and chill. Like Riley has school tomorrow, so he's gonna go to bed, and maybe my husband will watch a movie with me, but knowing him, he'll fall asleep 20 minutes into it. So I'm sure I'll be able to have reading time later tonight because he's gonna be jet lagged and want to go to sleep early, which is fine. I'm just really excited that he'll be back home so I can read in bed next to him while he's sleeping, which will be great. I don't know if I'll have time to update tomorrow. I think my husband has to go to work in the morning and fill out some paperwork, and then he has the rest of the day off, and then I think he actually has like the next 3 weeks off. So husband reveal coming soon. Yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to update you guys before I forgot. Once my husband gets home, we'll be, you know, hectic, settling down, unpacking, getting back into routine. So I'm happy to say that I can't wait to finish this. According to my Kobo, I have 4 hours left in the book. It is a very short book. I'm not that far in. Like I said, I'm 7% in. I also have about like literally 15 minutes left on the audiobook for The Bluest Eye. And oh my God, I was listening to that when I was cleaning this morning. And I had to keep like sitting down and taking a moment and just kind of like listening and catching my breath because, you know, I was like cleaning cat shit while I'm listening to this book about a girl being raped by her own father, and it was so sad and harrowing that I literally stopped what I was doing and just sat down and kind of just listened for a moment, because the way that Toni Morrison wrote those scenes in particular, like you can just feel the pain in every word of what was happening. And even though it is kind of like a cold, I don't know how to phrase what I'm trying to say. It's not like explicit. It's not like dirty or like vulgar, I guess is the word I'm looking for. It's not vulgar. It's a very clinical description of rape. But even so, just the way, like you could feel the way that it was laid out, even though it was a very clinical, like this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened, kind of situation. And then just describing the way that Piccola was kind of numb and catatonic during it, like really just made me like emotional. And wow, yeah, I've never read anything by Toni Morrison before, and I can see now why like people love her writing, even though it does handle heavy and horrible topics. But yeah, I can see why people love it, because she's definitely getting her point across, and hearing her narrate her own words too, I feel like is also just adding an extra layer to the emotion that I'm feeling, because just her tone of voice when she's saying these things, you can hear where she's intending for like points to hit and where she's like letting her voice get a little bit softer. And when someone has like an inner thought that we as the reader are hearing her say, certain people's inner thoughts have like an attitude or like an anger to them, and then some people's inner thoughts, like, but yeah, especially the little girl, whenever we get like moments from her inner thoughts, it's just her like, she's not even doing like a voice for the character specifically. It's just the way her voice is being heard, the way that she's projecting or softening, or sometimes she'll murmur things, and it's all very like, it's definitely like poignant when it needs to be. And then there are some parts of this story that are just kind of clinical and cold and harrowing and disgusting, and then there are some parts that are a little bit more vivid and vibrant, and it's really well written, really, really well written. Not that I wasn't expecting it not to be. Again, like I said, I just don't normally gravitate towards like slice of life historical fiction. I guess that's what you'd call this, right? Slice of life historical fiction. This is not a genre that I normally am like obsessed with, but for sure this book in particular, like, I know that it's well written, and I don't want to say like I'm enjoying it, because I'm not enjoying the subject matter, but I am enjoying the writing and the author's narration, and it's definitely hitting hard in a lot of places, and it's making me uncomfortable in places, which is what it's supposed to do. So it's doing what it set out to, and it's accomplishing the goal of allowing other people to listen to and experience what other people experience. Okay, this update has been way too long. I'm so sorry, but I don't know when I'll update again. I will be finishing The Bluest Eye as soon as I get off of here. I'm going to listen to that and finish it, and hopefully I'll be able to finish Fahrenheit 451 within the next 2 days, so I can squeeze in one of the other books that I had on my like kind of hopeful section for this week. Okay, I'll see you then. Shit, I punched my phone over. Hi, I'm coming to update to say that I am 50% through Fahrenheit 451. Still loving it. The writing is definitely like super metaphorical and abstract in places. And then it's also like very cut and dry in some of the dialogue. And I feel like the juxtaposition of the writing is also kind of adding to the like juxtaposition of this world and ours. It's really good at emphasizing the point of this is that it's not at all like our world, and it's like, what if we let our world get to this point? That's at least how I'm feeling anyways about it. Still really liking it. Yeah, so I'm halfway through, and it says I have 2 hours left. I really hope to finish this soon. I did also finish The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, and I don't want to rate it. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm gonna rate it. Like, I don't want to say I enjoyed it, because it was not like an enjoyable topic, and bad things happened to Pecola in the book, and I don't know, it's an odd feeling to like, I liked the writing and I liked the book, but I don't know if I want to rate it because I didn't like what happened to that poor girl. And by the end I was like holding back tears. Oh, she just really went through a lot of shit, and some of it was relatable. Her relationship with her mother, for example, was very close to home, and I just felt for her. And I like, obviously as a white kid, like my experience growing up was a lot different than hers, but I felt for her in the sense that like her peers didn't always like her, they made fun of her, they were kind of rude to her, and I also just know how it feels like to have that animosity with you and your mother. So it's like her school life sucked, her home life sucked, and then the shit with her fucking father. Oh my god, that poor girl. I guess I would rate it like 4 stars. I do think the beginning was just a tad boring, like very, very early on in the beginning. I would say only like the first 2 or 3 chapters, but once we started seeing like Pecola interacting with peers and kind of seeing how like some of them were treated better than her, and then seeing all these other people in her life or around her interacting with her or with each other, then it got more interesting because we got to see those relationship dynamics, and then my intrigue like peaked immediately. And I also really loved listening to the author read it herself on the audiobook. So I think like if I had to rate it, I would give it a 4 stars. But it is very harrowing. Trigger warning for rape and incest and bullying and racism and colorism and classism and wow, yeah, very like poignant. I think it'll stick with me for a long time. I'm happy to have read it, but I did also start the audiobook for Genderqueer. It's only like 2 hours long, and it's narrated by the author and then also a full cast of people to narrate conversations, which I think is really cool. So I'm only maybe 20 minutes into the audiobook, and I'm really loving the flow of the author's words. It feels a lot like a friend is kind of like opening up to me and being vulnerable with me and telling me these things about their childhood and their past and what they went through. And I'm really loving the narrative style, because I know sometimes like memoirs can be a little dry, but this one is very like, it just feels like you're just chilling with a friend who is kind of like needing to get something off their chest. And I love that feeling of like, I'm listening to it and I feel like really at ease and I'm intrigued and I want to know more. And I feel like so much empathy already, like just off the first 20 minutes of listening. And I can't wait to finish that one too. So I might be able to squeeze in one more book. And I did check out the graphic novel called Banned Books Club by Kim Yun-suk. And this one I just saw Rachel from Reads with Rachel talk about in a video, so I will link her channel and her video down below where she talks about this book. Rachel is an incredible like fighter. She fights against book banning in her county all the time, and if you're not following her, you really should be, because she inspires me to, you know, fight book banners and say fuck the man. So she is just an inspiration, and she's like one of the smartest people I've ever like seen in my life. The way that she talks about books, the way that she talks about book banning, and I just think she's great. So go follow her immediately. Go do it. But because this is a graphic novel, I think I'll definitely have time to squeeze this in. Fingers crossed. Again, I can't promise anything right now. My time management skills this week are out the window because with my husband coming home from deployment, I am like, I don't know what to do with myself. I want to spend time with him. I want to read books. I want to do hobbies, but like I have to prioritize. And I do also have the audiobook for All Boys Aren't Blue out from my library as well, which is only 5 hours long. So I'm going to go edit another video that I just filmed, hence why I'm in front of the shelves for this update. But I think I'm going to listen to the rest of Genderqueer while I edit, because it's only 2 hours long and I'm listening at like 1.6 speed. And then maybe I'll finish that in a day, which would be fantastic. So I can start All Boys Aren't Blue, and then hopefully I can finish Fahrenheit 451 by the weekend. And then I should be able to smash out Banned Books Club graphic novel on the weekend. Okay. Bye for now. I'm in my office and I'm editing a video, but I did finish Genderqueer by Mayo Kobabe, and wow, what a great story. It was so engaging. I listened to it so quickly. I did not want to put it down. It was really, really relatable in some places, like especially growing up and feeling awkward and just, you know, things about bodies that I still hate to this day. And I did learn that the author Maya goes by pronouns which are called air, which I've never heard of before, so I did look up more about them than what I get in this book. And so I believe I called Maya they before, but I need to correct that going forward. So this book was narrated by the author themselves, and also Air's sister Phoebe narrated the Phoebe parts of the book, and there was a full cast of characters that narrated like the mom, the dad, and like side characters in college, etc. But oh my god, how cute is it that Air's sister was also part of the audiobook. And I do know that this is also a graphic novel that was also narrated by Maya themselves, and the sister Phoebe also helped color the graphic novel. So I just think that's really sweet. Siblings are adorable. But this was really great to listen to. It was so quick. Obviously on audio it was only 2 hours because it's a graphic novel, but if anyone you know is questioning their gender or or even their sexuality, even just like the slightest bit, then this would be a good book to recommend to them. And I think it was just like informative and eye-opening, and just getting to see someone else's experience can help you understand, I think, things that you don't go through. So I really would recommend this towards people who maybe don't understand the concept of being genderqueer. I loved it. I thought it was great. The narration style also of the author was so like just like a friend, like telling you all these awkward and embarrassing things that they've been through, and like venting about life and air experiences. And yeah, it was great. Highly recommend. I finished it super quickly, so I think I will start the audiobook for All Boys Aren't Blue because I'm still editing. And also, as you can see, I'm cold. I have my my son's puppy blanket. Okay, today is Sunday the 29th, which means Banned Books Week ended yesterday on the 28th, and now it's time to wrap up everything I read. First, I want to start off by saying that this week was a resounding success for me. I read 6 things total, and given the fact that my husband came home from deployment on Tuesday and I was still able to fit in all of these exceptional reads, was really just chef's kiss of a week. I've had a great week in reading and in life in general. The first thing I read this week was When Aiden Became a Brother by Kyle Lukov, and this was just a really adorable kids picture book about a young boy who realized that he was trans and how his family helped him become his true self and help fix the uncomfortable feelings he was having in his appearance and his life, and just the things that he surrounded himself with in regards to gender, and how when Aiden finds out that he's gonna be a big brother, he doesn't want other people to expect certain things of his sibling based on what their gender is going to be. So he kind of makes it a point to minimize the fact that people ask like, oh, is it a boy or a girl? And Aiden's just like, it's a baby. I'm gonna be a brother. Isn't that cool? Like, you don't really need to know if it's going to be a boy or girl because who cares? And gender is a construct, and whatever they're born with for their genitals is not going to dictate their entire life. They can be whoever they want to be. And I just think it was really cute and wholesome, and it really helped start conversations with my own son to get him asking questions about gender and what does it mean to, you know, be born as a girl. And then he asked me about why did Aiden want to be a boy when he was born a girl, and it was just a really good conversation starter for him. He's only 5, and I think that this book in particular is perfect for that age. I would say maybe between like 5 and like 8 or 9 depending on reading level, but even then, I think as an adult too, it was just a cute book to see this child's experience and kind of understand better about ways that people make comments and it affects kids even if they don't realize it. So it was great for me as an adult, and it was great for my kid too. This week I also listened to The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, and this book was so like harrowing and just really sad and gut-wrenching. Toni Morrison's writing is beautiful. The prose was lyrical and melancholy and poetic, but it was very like sad and hard to listen to in places, but the writing even just made that impact like tenfold. And in this book we follow a girl named Piccola and the absolutely horrible things that happened to her in her life. Other kids just judging her, racism, colorism from other Black people, and unfortunately she also is a victim of rape and incest, and how her life kind of was dictated for her and she had no control over a lot of things that happened to her. And it was just really sad and eye-opening, and as a white person it made me uncomfortable, and it's supposed to make me uncomfortable, and it did what it set out to do. And I also just think Toni Morrison's writing was very poignant, and I think that a lot more people in this day and age like should read it, because I know a few people like on the bookish space online who have read it, but I don't know many people in real life who have read it, and I don't know a lot of white people who talk about it or have read anything by Toni Morrison. So if you're looking for a good introspective book about the life of a little Black girl in 1940, then you should pick this up. The next thing I read this month was Genderqueer by Maya Kovabe. I actually believe that this is a graphic novel, but I listened to it on audio, and it's read by the author and a full full cast of side characters, as well as the audiobook having music and sound effects. Oh my god, it was so immersive. It is only 2 hours long on audio, but I couldn't stop listening to it. It felt like Maya was my friend, and we were sitting down and I was listening to this story about my friend and their experiences about life and gender and sexuality and just awkward like teenage things and awkward college things, and just the internal struggle of, do you tell people about these identity crises? Do you tell people about your sexuality? Do you tell people you're exploring things? Do you tell people you don't feel one way or you feel another way? And it just felt like really relatable. Really related to some of Maya's internal struggles and the internal monologue that we got glimpses into, and some of the experiences during Maya's college years. And I just really thought that this was funny while also being like sad and relatable, and it just used humor to portray these experiences in a way that felt like having coffee with a friend and just bitching about life and talking shit about, you know, things you've been through, and laughing in hindsight, and just kind of having that perspective of like who you are now, looking back at your struggles in your past. So this was fantastic. 5 stars. Highly recommend. It's very short, only 2 hours. Absolutely check it out. What did I read next? I don't know. I'm talking too long. I don't even know if I hit record. I don't even know. Did I hit record? I have no idea. Okay, I did hit record. Just checking. I also read Fahrenheit 451 this week. Now, this book is a classic. I think it's like 60 or 70 years old. And I was skeptical going into it because I'm not a classic lover. But the premise of this book really appealed to me. So in this book, we follow a guy named Guy. Sorry, I should have said man because that just made me lose it. Okay, in this book we follow a man named Guy Montag, and who turned out the lights? A cloud just went by and I forgot to turn my overhead light on. So if I turn my overhead light on now, is it gonna make the video look weird for the rest of the video, or do I just wait for the clouds to go away? So in this book we follow a man named Guy Montag, and he is a fireman. However, firemen in this book are not what you would think. Instead of putting out fires, they start them. So firemen in this world exist to be essentially like police ban books, or like control reading, because reading is illegal. I think you can't even own any books at all. It's not even just like a list of certain books, it's just any book at all. And they get an alarm that says, it's like a tip, and they get an alarm at the firehouse, and it's a tip about someone who's like, hey, I know so-and-so has books, like you gotta go get them, whatever. So they'll roll up to their house, get all the books in a pile, burn them, and then also burn the person's house down, and then have the person arrested. So as you can see, it's very over the top. The firemen, it's a little overkill the way that they handle people owning a book. And some of these people actually choose to burn in their house instead of going to jail, because they're like, no, fuck you, like you're not taking my books, and they just stay inside of the engulfed house and choose to burn with their books. And we start following Guy as he's walking home one day, and he meets a young girl named Clarice, and she just has a lot of questions for him, and he starts answering them begrudgingly, but something about her personality and the way that she's asking him questions kind of loosens up something inside of him. And over the course of the book, we see his struggles with, is what I'm actually doing okay? Should I really be burning these books? People are dying for this. People are willing to die for these things. Like, is that a sign that maybe what I thought is right isn't right anymore? And I think that this book started out for me like so strong. I was really surprised by the writing. There were a lot of metaphors that I found really unique and like lyrical and beautiful, and I was very excited to kind of get into the meat of the plot. But unfortunately, the book was really good for me, like the first 60%, and the last 40% was just so boring. I don't want to spoil if you haven't read it, and I think what I'll say is that we have the rising action, and then there's like a climax moment, but then the falling action kind of goes nowhere. Like, it kind of is like, oh my god, this epic crazy moment, and I feel like you're, as a reader, you're very heightened for what comes next. You're like, oh shit, like where's this gonna lead? But then the payoff is like really disappointing. So I think I gave it like a 3.5 stars, because the premise is great and I did like the writing in the beginning. And even though the last 40% was like really boring, I think the writing was still great. So I think it's absolutely worth your read. In the first 60%, it really sucked me in. And it just made me think about parallels in our lives where we have book banners and book challenges, and what would happen if we went to those extremes of like actually burning books and arresting people just for owning books. As you can see, I'd be fucked. But I do think that this is worth the read, but unfortunately for me, like I said, the end really fell off and I didn't love it. I'm not obsessed with it, but I still really liked it overall. This week I also read the graphic novel Banned Book Club. This book is based on a true story, and I really was just kind of shocked and also enraptured the entire time that I was reading it. So this book, I believe, is semi-autobiographical, where it is based on this real experience that the author had. I am assuming that some of it is exaggerated for the purpose of it being like a graphic novel, but the main character and the author, Kim Yeon-suk, start attending college in 1983 in South Korea, and how she becomes entangled in this group of friends who are activists and read banned books and publish articles in the school newspaper and try to get the students involved, and they're just like fighting the man and fighting against fascists in South Korea during this time. So this time in South Korea was called the Fifth Republic, and it was a military regime that held onto power via censorship, and they also tortured and murdered protesters on like a regular basis. They really used their power to oppress and extinguish essentially anyone who opposed them. And we follow Hyun-suk as she finds comfort, I guess, in this group of friends who kind of open her eyes and help her wake up, which is a term that they use in the book, where they said you've got a lot of waking up to do, because I think that some level of like ignorance is bliss was happening. Once Hyung-suk kind of had her eyes opened from her group of friends, she really became passionate about like fighting back and doing the right thing and just activism in general, and like being anti-fascist. And I think that this graphic novel, like, of that was so beautiful, because I really got to see, you know, it's one thing to read like words on a page of like, oh, like the military regime was beating us, and it's like literally seeing it drawn in black and white was harrowing, but also I really loved learning about it in this style, because I am a visual learner, and I think that these images and this story will stay with me for a long time. And I really loved the conclusion of it, because we see Hyung-suk in college, and then at the end we see her as a grown-up like years later. The story itself, while being very like harrowing and traumatic and scary, also has a little bit of hope at the end, and it is a very hopeful ending, and I think it's very inspiring in general. And again, this was Hyun-suk's like real lived experience, and I think it being real adds another layer to that like fear that the book portrays, because you know that it's real. It's just a great read. I honestly think that it was informative and eye-opening, and I loved getting that insider glimpse of like what it was like back then in South Korea in 1983. And I highly recommend this one. I started it yesterday morning at like 9 a.m. and I could not stop reading it until I finished. I think I read for like 3 hours straight, and it's not a very long book, but I was just taking my time with it, and even just like digesting the pictures, because there were some pictures that were just like, whoa, you know, like holy shit. I'm looking at like police beating up an innocent man. I'm looking at like police lines and protesters, and like there's tear gas. And normally I hate like reading books that are based on people's like real life experiences, because it's not, someone's real life is not really like for you to like judge on your enjoyment. But I gave this one a 5 stars because the author took so much time and care to craft this real life experience that she had into a graphic novel version for us that was just easy to read, easy to digest in formatting, even though the subject matter wasn't as easy to read or digest. But I think it did kind of make it more accessible to people who wouldn't normally pick up something of this nature. So I think that if you ever are in the need for like a non-fiction-y type of story, but you're not usually a non-fiction reader, this one bridges that gap beautifully, and I definitely think it's worth your time. It is, like I said, harrowing, traumatic, scary, but there is a little kernel of like hope and stuff at the end, and is inspiring, and I think more people need to read it. And the last thing I read this week was All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. This is a nonfiction book of I guess essays that all are sequential and do kind of make up an overarching story about the author's life, and it is a great look into the life of a queer Black boy and his experience growing up, and just some of the horrible things that he went through as a young boy, but also some of the beautiful things that he got to experience growing up as well. And it's literally just about his life. And I think that the audiobook was fantastic. It was narrated by the author, and I really felt connected to him in a way. Like, again, this book felt like someone was just sitting down on my couch and like telling me their story, and I felt like so engaged, and I just felt for him so many times during this where something bad would happen, and just the way that he spoke about his experiences. He always was very honest and open about things that happened to him, but you could tell that he wasn't speaking negatively about people, and definitely he had empathy for those around him, even people who treated him badly. And I think that this book had a few great examples of gender stereotypes in general, and masculinity being toxic versus healthy masculinity. We'll get an essay with a story about a certain situation, and then at the end, usually before the chapter ends and we go on to the next essay, the author George Johnson would basically kind of say like, this is what happened to me and this is what I took away from it. So I think it's a really great way for people to see like how certain situations actually can affect someone even years down the road. And I think that it's a great book for people to read if you want to be a better ally. I think that this is also a great book for young queer Black boys, or young queer Black folk in general, because this book also dives into consent and how consent can change. And you can give consent one moment and take it away the next, and you don't need to feel guilty about that, and how like your pleasure matters when you're exploring your sexuality. And I guess there was like an underlying shame and guilt that kind of comes with that, and I feel like that's really common when people explore their sexuality in general, to feel like shame and guilt, because you're like, oh my god, like should I not like this thing that I like? And I think that this book is really gonna be a great safe way for teens to hear about similar experiences of their own, kind of see like subtleties, because sometimes abuse isn't obvious and sometimes it is subtle. And I think that seeing like those subtleties in abuse, and also seeing like what consent looks like, and seeing that you can take it away, and also seeing that like their sexuality matters to them, and that's also what's important. And I think that this book was fantastic. Again, I don't like rating books about people's lives, but Genderqueer and All Boys Aren't Blue, as well as Banned Books Club, I gave all 5 stars, because the way that each one of these authors took their experience and carefully crafted this story and book for us to read definitely deserves that 5 stars. And again, I just want to make it obvious that I'm not like rating his life, or I'm not rating Maya's life or Yun Suk's life. I'm just rating like their authorial, is that a word? Authorial? Is that a word? I'm just rating their like authorial prowess and skill in delivering that story to us. So that's everything I read in Banned Books Week. I got 6 books in this week, which really was amazing. I loved everything that I read. Well, I mean, I wasn't obsessed with Fahrenheit 451, but it is what it is. I still really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot of new things. I think that my eyes were opened for certain lived experiences from people who are different than me, and I strongly encourage any of you watching this to pick up any of these books. I think if I had to choose only one book for you to pick up off of the 6 that I read this week, I would probably choose All Boys Aren't Blue, because I think it has some of the most important topics. Like I said, it has consent, and there is abuse in there, and just kind of like how abuse doesn't always feel obvious in the moment. And I think especially for teens, that is a very important thing to know. I understand why all of these books have been challenged, and it's because people who don't want teens to know these things are trying to get it out of their hands, and that disgusts me. I actually really want to end my Banned Books vlog by reading you a quote from Banned Books Club. So here, essentially, Hyun Suk is being like demonized by a classmate, and Young Suk says, "So you really gotta wonder, do they ban books because they see danger in the author or because they see themselves in the villain?" When I read that quote, I was like, oh my god, you just hit the nail on the head. Majority of these people who want to get these books out of kids' hands is because they want kids to be uninformed. They don't want them to know safe ways to explore sexuality. They don't want them to know what safe sex looks like. They don't want them to know what consent is, and they don't want these things easily accessible in schools and in libraries. Or likewise, it's people who don't want kids and young adults to know what it means to stand up to the government and to not take things lying down and to stand up to fascists and dictators and fight for what's right. So it's definitely hit the nail on the head with that one, and that quote will stick with me for a long time. It's perfect. Like, I could not have said it better myself. Literally, I couldn't, because I'm not as smart as Hyun Suk is. But I hope that you all picked up at least one banned book during Banned Books Week this year. And if you did, please let me know what your favorite one was in the comments, and if you learned anything from it. And if you made it this far in the video, then please leave the like circle with the line through it emoji down in the comments so I know that you read banned books this week. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!